Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Facebook page, YouTube page, and X page. This is the Celtic Way morning briefing for Thursday, the 16th of January. My name is Ryan McGinley. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin McKenna. Kevin, how are you doing this morning?
Good, Ryan. Decent start to the new year. No complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be discussing all sorts of things today, both on and off the pitch for Celtic. Just before we get started, guys, if you want to support us just a little bit extra, we have currently got a special offer going on just now on the Celtic Way, which is £1 for 6 months of coverage. If you go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe, you'll get transfer latest, breaking manager, player interviews, match tactics and analysis with stats bomb data from myself, Stuart Ross and Alan Morrison, scouting reports and player analysis from the likes of Tony, John, myself, Stuart and Alan as well, exclusive Celtic interviews, a bespoke ad-free app that's available on the App Store and the Google Play Store, and much, much more. So if you go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe and get involved, guys, it's our best ever offer that we're doing. £1 will get you sorted for 6 months, and that'll have you covered until the end of the season. I think before we go on and talk about transfers, Kevin, we'll talk about the game on Tuesday. Obviously, it was 3 each with Celtic and Dundee at Dens Park. I was at the game. It was a bit of a topsy-turvy game. What did you make of that, of the 94 minutes of football that took place in the city of Discovery?
I was actually quite enthralled for most of it. Now, I have to be frank here and say I'm not sure I'd be using the word enthralled if we were only 4 or 5 points ahead of our closest challengers. So maybe you're able to appreciate the game in a bit more of a relaxed fashion. There were a couple of areas of concern, not the least of which was the way Austin Trusty wasn't winning duels, but it wasn't just him. There were, as the game wore on, especially in the second half, Dundee, it was plain to see Dundee were winning 50-50s all over the park. But, if you look at our playing schedule over the last 2 months, I think we said it on here at the beginning, it was inevitable that we were going to underperform, call it what you will. But I hate to say underperform because I thought Dundee were tremendous. I thought Dundee actually provided the template for all other clubs out with Celtic and Rangers to play against us. And Dundee they're a big city club. They've got a great tradition. Tony Docherty is turning into a really good coach. He's getting a tune out of good players. He's doing what few other SPL managers do in similar circumstances, because all those other clubs have got good, skillful players, but they rarely get the opportunity to showcase it. And he's done that. And, we just take it. You can't be at 100% every game, 2 games a week, 4 different competitions. I was not shocked, but I was slightly disappointed on seeing the response on social media, or the analysis on social media, about Engels' performance when he came on. I thought Engels was fine. He's always trying things. He's always trying to carry the ball. I think we saw the value of Kuhn. As soon as Kuhn came on, the game began turning back in our favour. I'll take it. Well played Dundee. We showed a bit of resilience. It's at the end of this punishing schedule, and we've come out of that. When we went into this in probably late November, early December, we were 9 points ahead of Rangers. We're now 13 points ahead of them. Win.
Yeah, absolutely. Even with that result at Ibrox, there's a couple of talking points I think that come from that game. People have been quite, responsive when they're talking about Arnold Engels' performance off the bench. The fact of the matter is, he was there to put the ball in the back of the net when it came to the nitty-gritty and on the penalty spot, and he made no mistake from 12 yards. He's pretty much spotless apart from that retaking penalty at Ross County. He's dependable from that position. I think he left his shooting boots on. He left his shooting boots off with every other chance he had for that one, but the one that mattered right at the end, and a real pressure moment as well. He showed why Celtic paid £11 million for him, because his quality was there for all to see. There's been a lot of discourse, Kevin, online about Adam Ida's performance and his performances over the last 12 games. He's had a real dry spell in front of goal. What's your take on the striker just now? Because he seems like a guy that's maybe lacking in confidence. I say that he also had the back heel against Ross County that showed some of his qualities, that put McGregor in, which allowed him to pass to Johnson, and then Johnson assisted Kyogo up in Dingwall. What's your thoughts on it? I know Brendan Rodgers has been quick to say that he doesn't want his strikers to be scoring 40 goals this season. He wants the goals to be spread out, but he would be wanting his strikers to be scoring more than what he is doing just now.
I think Adam Ida has earned some patience from us, mainly due to his contribution at a vital part of last season. If you look at the transfer fee, and of course it was far too much. He's not a 9 million, or it wasn't a £9 million player we were getting. I'm still certain that he can do something with Celtic, and that if we were to go elsewhere, we would still make a profit on him. But scoring the winner in a Derby Cup final, the first time that we've beaten Rangers in the Scottish Cup final since 2002. They'd won the two. In fact, no, since 1989. They'd won two since then, or between times. To score a vital goal at Ibrox, a very good goal at Ibrox, to score at Rugby Park, turn in a great performance at Rugby Park when we still had to go over the line with the league. That buys him some credit. Until 2 or 3 games ago, his goals per minutes ratio wasn't too bad at all. He's still young. He's got the added. It's a disadvantage because when he's in the team, he knows that there has to be a big performance, but he doesn't know if he's going to get more than 2 or 3 games, at a pop and a run to do that, and that will play on him. He's been there or thereabouts with some of the balls that have been delivered into the box. But, he hasn't got it, but somebody else has. He hasn't missed. It's not as though he's missing big chances. I know he should have scored against Dundee, although the keeper did very well. But you'd be struggling to look at a string of golden opportunities that he's passed up. And when strikers, miss gilt-edged opportunities, that's usually an indicator of a lack of confidence. That doesn't really apply to Adam Ida. I still think he will make an important contribution to us. It's, again, when you're talking about the temptation to spend 8, 9, 10 million pounds on a striker who is basically a backup in the system that you play, it's just one of those things. I actually think I've got a theory. I have a theory that, and maybe you guys can knock this down, but I think Rodgers is trying out the combination of him up top, Kyogo out to the right, in readiness for Rangers, because Rangers believe that they've worked out how to play us in the system that Brendan Rodgers favours. And I wonder if he's just looking at tweaking it like that. Well, it's more than a tweak. Knowing that if it doesn't work, he's got the option of Kyogo coming into the middle and a winger coming on, or vice versa. It could be Kyogo coming off. I just wonder if he's using our massive advantage just to try something different that will flummox Rangers when they visit Parkhead.
Potentially. I also think it's down to the fact that Kuhn's been injured as well, and he's pretty much a certainty on the right. Although I think he's had more ineffectual games versus Rangers than impactful ones. So he's found that quite difficult. I know he scored in the League Cup final, and he should have had an assist in the home game, but he was largely anonymous. Not all down to him. I think the fact that he got that whack in the face definitely impacted his performance, definitely in the second half, made him a little bit, maybe not timid, but apprehensive to go into more challenges for fear of getting more of a bruising, especially on the nose. That was quite a whack that he got off of Jeffy. Do you think that's maybe a wider issue, the fact that the strikers at Celtic, I know Kyogo scored 2 goals at the weekend against Ross County, but both of them are down on their numbers on last season, and particularly the season before, because Kyogo scored something like 24, 34 goals in that 22-23 season in Ange Postecoglou's side. Is that a wider issue, the fact that the strikers up front, the forwards, aren't scoring as many goals? Is that maybe just it worked better under Ange Postecoglou? The forward was the focal point, I think goals, partly, and now the goals are spread out.
Partly. I still think Kyogo will get 20 goals or more before the end of the season, which means that he will have reached 100 goals or more in the 4 seasons that he's played with us. That's what you want from a Celtic striker.
It was 34 goals that season. That was a really good season for him. And
he's a good striker. He's an international striker. And I don't think calling it a lean spell is entirely accurate, given that most of the games he's played, he's coming off the bench. And the way that teams set up against Celtic, he's earned a bit of patience. Ask me again this time towards the end of March. I don't, Kyogo's also, and I think we saw this against Ross County. Kyogo's such an intelligent, all-round footballer as well. He's a great passer of the ball, and he's as brave as a lion, and he'll run all day. And there's also, the option of playing him in a more withdrawn role. That if you stuck Kyogo into our midfield, he would deliver. I remember when Brendan, at the beginning of last season, Brendan Rodgers was being criticised because we all thought that Kyogo was playing in a much more withdrawn role, and that's why he wasn't hitting the back of the net. And Rodgers kept saying, no, he's playing in the same position he was playing under Ange. It wasn't really. But I still thought, God, he's still delivering. His range of passing with both feet is great. He's just an all-round footballer who's worked really, really hard at his trade to get the rewards that he's now getting. He's such an example to any young footballer. He's a master. Not a master. He has mastered a lot of the skills that are required to be a top-class footballer in such a way that you just know you would get something from him no matter where you played him in the park.
Yeah, he's such an important player for Celtic, and he has been for a number of years now. You forget that, he joined the club nearly 4 or 5 years ago. So he's been here for a wee while now. It feels as if he's just arrived, but he's been here for years, and he's been such a key part to a lot of Celtic's modern success, both under Ange Postecoglou and Brendan Rodgers. Shall we get on and talk about the more positive stuff, Kevin?
Yes.
I realise that we've spoke about the Dundee game for a little bit too long. I think we need to talk about the elephant, the Arsenal-shaped elephant in the room, because there's a certain player that was involved last night in a North London derby. There was a lot of Celtic links last night in the North London derby. You had Ange Postecoglou, former Celtic manager, who's now the Tottenham manager, and you had a former Celtic player that came onto the pitch that looks as if he's going to be a current Celtic player by the end of this window, in Kieran Tierney. That news was broke yesterday, or an update was broke yesterday by Fabrizio Romano, saying that Celtic and Arsenal are in talks over a pre-contract agreement with the potential to bring him in on loan as well. Now that coincided with the news that Alex Bailly looks as if he's going to make a move to Como FC. Now that makes sense, as a former Barcelona player is currently the manager of Como, and Cesc Fabregas. So all of these wee parts are now connected. You can see how they're all interlinked. First of all, Kevin, what's your thoughts? Are you happy to hear about the potential return of Kieran Tierney to his boyhood club? And then maybe after that, what's your thoughts on the Alex Bailly situation?
Yeah. Look, Kieran Tierney is 27. He's at a stage in his career and in his, his physical maturity, where a professional player's coming into the prime of his life expectancy as a footballer, his football life expectancy. That breaks the pattern of what usually happens with Celtic when a Premiership player comes to Celtic Park. It's usually at the end of their career. It's usually there's a bit of romance involved. The likes of Robbie Keane, likes of Roy Keane.
Played for one of his 10 boyhood clubs.
Those were just two. There was others that didn't work so well. So we're potentially getting a player who is arguably a more rounded, better player than when he left us, a much more mature player. He's been coached. He's had, 5 years of coaching at one of the best clubs in the world, one of the best coaching setups. And after a horrendous injury spell, Mikel Arteta still puts him on with 15 minutes to go in a North London derby that's still in the balance. Of course, there are fitness issues, but you can overthink that, because there are very, very few players who don't have at least one long spell out with injury. The downside is that, I suppose very rarely, I'm trying to be super optimistic here, very rarely does it work with a player coming back on a second spell to his club. In that we, especially if it's a returning hero, the expectation and the desire is for him to immediately replicate the quality of performance that we were accustomed to getting from him in the first spell. The only time it ever worked, the 2 or 3 times that I can look back and see where it worked, was Bertie Auld coming back to Celtic for a second spell under Jock Stein. And wow, how spectacularly did that work? And he was coming back from Birmingham City. Another one was, in recent times, Fraser Foster for a season. Mm-hmm. Worked brilliantly for us. It's a bit patchy. However, this is different. I can't see that many downsides. beyond the injury issue, and therefore you have to trust. You have to trust our fitness people and their judgment, and you have to assume that they will put him through. There'll be a strict examination, medical analysis of the pattern of injuries that he's had and what the future holds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on field, apart from the injuries, there are so many upsides when it comes to Kieran Tierney. Because, I said this tongue in cheek last night to a group chat that I'm in. I said he ticks the homegrown criteria as well for Europe because Celtic, developed him. But there's also the sort of romantic side of it all, because it's your homegrown player coming back. He's 27 years old. It's not as if, as you quite rightly said, he's a player coming in that's 31, 32. He might have a lot of mileage on him due to the fact he's had those injuries and he's played in the Premier League and it is demanding. But he's coming up at the right time, in my opinion. 27 years old, he's in his prime. He's had his chance down south. He's obviously went out on loan to Real Sociedad in La Liga. And that went quite well for him as well. I actually got him some much needed game time last season and really got him back in the fold, especially for the Euros. It was so unfortunate what happened at the Euros with that injury that he picked up. I think he picked up in the second game that forced him out of the third game. I thought he was a massive miss for Scotland in that third game against Hungary. For me, I think there's no downsides apart from the injury worries, because if Kieran Tierney's, that Kieran Tierney's good enough for this team. He's done it before. I'd argue that he's a better player coming back because he'll be more tactically astute. He's played in more international games. He has grown up as well. I've always thought he was quite a mature individual, but he looks even more so. If you listen to him speaking in interviews, he's a man now. He's not that boy that left Celtic 5-6 years ago. He's a potential captain candidate if he comes back to the club. Another leader in there, a guy that younger players can look up to, not just the left backs that are coming through, but all over the academy. There's an example of a player that made it and came through and took his chance and took his opportunity. And it's somebody that Brendan Rodgers knows well as well. The manager that arguably made him in Brendan Rodgers. In fact, I don't even think there's a doubt about that. He is the manager that made Kieran Tierney the player that he is today. I think having moves like this for Brendan Rodgers in turn will keep Brendan Rodgers at the club for longer than that 3 years. Bringing in somebody like that, he will have earmarked Kieran Tierney as being one of the potential signing targets that that Celtic wanted, that he wanted coming back to Celtic if he was available. So yeah, I think there's so many upsides. What's your opinion on the whole Greg Taylor situation, Kevin? Because there has been talk about him maybe going to the MLS, maybe going to Dinamo Zagreb. A couple of teams in the Championship as well have been linked. Do you think there's an ideal world where Greg Taylor signs a new deal and the two players, Kieran Tierney and Greg Taylor, fight it out for that position? Because I don't think we're naive enough to suggest that Kieran Tierney won't pick up injuries during his time at Celtic. That's just the sort of player that he is, unfortunately. He'll go blood and thunder in every single game, and that may be to his detriment. So it's important to have somebody waiting in the wings that maybe doesn't do the same thing as Tierney, but he can come on and provide something different. And Greg Taylor's got that range of passing. Do you think it's key that Celtic get him signed up as well, if possible too?
For all those reasons, yeah. But I think that's the ideal world.
Yeah.
The reality is that Greg Taylor has played 200 games and has been a mainstay. And he's coming into, again, that part of his career when he needs to be playing. He's at the peak. He's coming into the.
Who did he replace as well at Celtic?
Exactly.
It's quite crazy, that.
So, yeah, the ideal scenario is the one that you outlined. That having someone like Greg Taylor, who's played 200 games, who hasn't let us down, works his socks off, model professional. But you're basically saying to him, no matter how much money comes with the new contract offer, you're basically saying to him, you're effectively saying to him, we're paying you to be our backup to Kieran Tierney. But Kieran's got injury problems, so you'll probably get a few games. you're Greg Taylor, you're not buying that. I'm sorry. If that's Greg Taylor, who's only played sporadically over the last 4 or 5 years and has been a backup and is just delighted to be here and contributing here and there, fine. But Greg Taylor is a key member, has been an integral member of the team that has won 5 trophies out of 6, 7 out of 9 in the last 3 seasons. So it's not going to happen, I'm afraid to say. And he would go with my undying admiration. He hasn't done much wrong. There's been a couple of high-profile errors, but my God, his head doesn't go down in those situations. The errors have proven not to have been crucial, in the final analysis. In the Champions League, you could argue that in the Champions League level, he's just that little bit short, that when Champions League players are pressing that part of the defence, he sometimes becomes a bit unstuck, and that's when the kind of the slackness enters. But that's, my God, he can look back in his Celtic career with a lot of pride, and we can with a lot of gratitude.
Yeah,
but to retain him, I just can't see it happening.
No, I think, and I do agree with you. I think he will move on to pastures now. I think if he was going to sign a new contract, it would have already happened by now. The fact that it's 6 months and there might even be moves happening in the background. He is free and available to speak to other clubs, and he's well within his rights to do that. That's the Bosman rule, and it's important that players have that freedom to move to different teams. So he's in the last 6 months of his contract. Brendan Rodgers has said that his professionalism won't drop even with this contractual situation. So I'm inclined to agree and believe in the manager and believe what he says with regard to Taylor. Just a couple of other wee points that we need to talk about before we finish off today. Celtic were also linked with Real Valladolid's winger Raul Moro, who's made a bit of a breakthrough this season in La Liga. It was the Daily Mail and Stephen McGowan that were reporting that an £8.5 million sort of valuation has been placed on the player. He's also been linked with the likes of Ajax as well. If Ajax are looking at wingers, then they're pretty much going to be quality if they're trying to bring them in mid-season as well. He's a player that started off his career, I think it was in Barcelona's youth academy before moving to Lazio. He's made his way around a couple of clubs. I think he's 21, 22 years old, but he seems to have found a home at Real Valladolid. That's obviously the team that Jota was out on loan at in the season prior to him joining Celtic on loan. So no stranger to that team, but it looks as if they've got a pretty high valuation. £8.5 million. Kevin, is that the sort of player that you would be looking for to play in that left wing? Because I think it's quite clear that Palma's probably going to leave and then go to another Rayo Vallecano.
In normal circumstances, yes. But there's a big obstacle here. I think if Brendan Rodgers goes for him and wants the board to shell out £8.5, £9 million, he's going to face some resistance at boardroom level simply because he paid 16, 24, 25 million quid for 3 players, of which maybe only one, Engels, has is a first choice pick every game. I think the board would be saying to him, look, Brendan, before you earn the right to spend money in that vicinity, we need to get a bit more change. We want to see a bit more bang for our £25 million bucks. I might be wrong. I think the board would also say we're 13 points ahead. Let's just see how everyone's doing by the end of the season. For the reasons you stated, if Ajax are interested in you, you're a good player.
That's more.
No doubt.
I made that tweet last night. I put that tweet out on social media, and people were giving me examples of bad players that Ajax had signed over the past 3-4 years. I'm like, right, okay, I get that. It's not perfect, but just as a rule of thumb, if Ajax are in for you, then
I totally agree with you. And we should, it's good that we're looking in that area. And Lewis Palma is going to go. It just hasn't really worked out for the wee fella. I wish it had. He's got bags of skill. But I just sense there might be a bit of resistance. I hope I'm wrong. But
I think the
one think it's a case of Brendan saying, I don't think it's a case of Brendan knocking the door and saying, right, the boy's coming. Can I just have your signature? Let's have a wee chat, Brendan.
Just as we're on live as well, there's also links with BK Haken's winger as well. Zidane Inusa, a winger that plays for the Swedish side. They're a Swedish side that are really bringing in a lot of good youngsters at the moment. They were so impressive against Aberdeen. I think it was last season in the Europa League, I seem to believe, or the Europa Conference League, the qualifiers. They were a really impressive outfit, and they're definitely a team to watch in terms of young talents coming through. So there's clearly movement happening with regard to that left wing spot. I think there has to be, because Lewis Palma will be going to pastures now, sort of try to restart his career in Spain after not getting a lot of game time at Celtic for a multitude of reasons. I think form. I think there's some off-field issues as well. He's had a couple of bereavements recently that haven't helped his flow. The one counterpoint that I would make to not sign a winger in January is the fact that Celtic, they're going to be coming up against teams in the Champions League qualifiers. They're going to have a Champions League qualifier in the summer, autumn. And they need to bring in somebody. I think they would prefer to bring in somebody now rather than bed someone in the summer, and then hope that they acclimatise. I think it's better having the 6 months prior to get them used to Scotland, get them used to playing for Celtic and the expectations that bring. Of course, they've already got Daizen Maeda on the left-hand side, who is an automatic first pick at the moment. But I think we all want Celtic. We all want that position to be contested by two players, because at the moment when Daizen Maeda is fit, Daizen Maeda plays. So you want to have two players of equal quality that can come in and out and rotate and really push each other for that position. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. It's given the way Celtic play, it's a crucial position. It's been key, mainly because of the form of Daizen. It's been key to some of our best performances in Europe in the last couple of years. It's also raised our expectations of what we expect in that area. In fact, both wide areas, because the goals of Kuhn and Maeda over the last season, in Maeda's case, over the last 2 seasons, have been absolutely crucial to what we've achieved. But Daizen, he plays at full tilt. Doesn't always work for him. I have seen a bit of an improvement in his, when he's trying to cross the ball at full tilt, because sometimes it's get the crash helmet on if you're sitting in row F. Sometimes it works.
Row F's a conservative letter for some of those crosses.
I know. But we kind of now, we're in a position where we just sort of laugh it off, because usually before he's made the cross, like he's crossed like 3 timelines.
That's Daizen. It's just what Daizen does. I think that's we shrug it off. We know what he brings.
Yeah, I'm not going to use the word. I'm not going to use the phrase cult hero, because that suggests somebody who's not, his contribution's not been brilliant, but we just love the way he plays. He's just been brilliant. But it's such an important position that there needs to be competition. But again, do you say, this is for Celtic, they're at a disadvantage? Do you say an £8.5 million, £9 million winger, can he guarantee you playing every week, son? You can if you're Arsenal. You can if you're Liverpool. You can if you're Bayern Munich. But with Brendan Rodgers, he's got a bit of charm. We're a massive club. We've had loads of exposure with this new Champions League setup. Both the way we played, the results, and the atmosphere at Celtic Park and the fans. So that'd be great if we get it, but it's not. It's not a given. It's not a given at all.
Yeah. Speaking of Maeda, a game that he could potentially be back for at the weekend is Celtic's Scottish Cup game against Kilmarnock in the 4th round of the Scottish Cup. It's their first game in this year's competition. Big game. Kilmarnock, a good side, blown a bit hot and cold this season with some of their results. I don't think European football helped them at all in the start of the season, but it seems as if they're getting used to the vigours of this season, and Derek McInnes is a good manager at this level as well, I would say. So a big game for Celtic at home. Just quickly, Kevin, how do you see that game going at the weekend, and do you foresee the likes of Daizen Maeda and Nicholas Kuhn coming back into the team and starting, especially with Wednesday coming up as well?
The Scottish Cup will always be important to us. It's stitched into our folklore. It's stitched into our DNA. Yep. We've won it 42 times. It's not, it's quite rare that you get a first round / 4th round tie against SPL opposition. So there's a bit of an edge here. This isn't a lower league 3-4-5-0 game. They'll bring a good support too. Kilmarnock have got a great Scottish Cup tradition too. It should be a really good occasion, and the players, all good players, feed off good atmospheres. I think it'll be a great atmosphere at Celtic Park, and I think that's ideal for Maeda to be reintroduced with Kuhn on the other side. Celtic at full tilt, iron out a few of the wrinkles in the last few weeks.
Would there be any other big changes you make? There's obviously been the call for Johnny Kenny to get more of a look in. I thought he was good against Ross County when he came on. He got that assist to Luke McCowan. Luke McCowan, who's a bit of a goal machine at the moment, we were also speaking to him the other day, and he was delighted that he's actually eligible for this competition because he wasn't when he moved from Dundee.
Johnny Kenny's a good player.
He's got something about him, hasn't he?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on that lad. I think he's got something. I'd be so delighted if he made it. I get the same feeling about him as I do about Luke Cowan. There's this kind of residual fondness and desire for them to do well.
Yeah, I think everybody really likes Luke McCowan and what he brings, not just because he's a boyhood Celtic fan that's made it and got into the first team, but look at his volume of goals he's scored in the last 2 games. He makes an impact, and he's ultra positive both on and off the pitch. I think we've been going on for 38, 39 minutes. Kevin, it's been a bit of a longer show this morning. Is there anything else that you want to touch upon before we leave today's show?
No, I think I'll go back to a point I made earlier, which is at the end of that punishing schedule, we are now 3 points better off than we were when we went into it, and we're 1 home game again away against a Swiss team from getting into the latter stages of the Champions League. What a position to be in. Sometimes as fans, we're concentrating in some of the bumps, some of the wrinkles, and some of the performances the last few weeks. But come on, it's coming to the end of January. We're almost 2/3 of the domestics through the domestic season. 13 points ahead, edge of the Champions League knockout stages, fully fit squad, I'm on the hoops. What's not to like?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're in a great position and they're back in Scottish Cup action for the first time this season on Saturday against Derek McInnes's Kilmarnock side. Just a quick shout out for the current offer that we're doing on the Celtic Way on www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. £1 for 6 months of content. You've got transfer latest, breaking manager and player interviews, match tactics and analysis with StatsBomb data or data provider, scouting reports, player analysis, exclusive Celtic interviews, and our bespoke ad-free app. If you want to check all that out, go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe for terms and conditions. Kevin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
We'll be back at the same time tomorrow to discuss all things Celtic. Until then, guys, have a very, very good day. See you later.